A new report shows how China is brainwashing Gen Z through TikTok, and while it's not surprising, we should all be alarmed. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell, and we are getting there. I'm making a push to get China Uncensored to 2 million subscribers by the end of the year. When I started a few weeks ago, we needed 40,000 subscribers. Now, it's down to just 20,000 more. So if you're watching and you aren't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. And if you are subscribed, again, remember to make sure you're still subscribed, because YouTube has been secretly unsubscribing people. And now on with the show. TikTok has been at the center of a lot of controversy lately in the United States. Earlier this year, President Biden signed a bill into law that could ban TikTok if the Chinese parent company ByteDance doesn't sell it to a US-based company. In response, TikTok sued the US government in an attempt to overturn the law, which might not have been the best idea on TikTok's part, because the oral arguments in the case require sticking the TikTok algorithm under a microscope, with plenty of organizations stepping up to the plate to do the honors. One of these organizations is the Network Contagion Research Institute, or NCRI. They just released a new report detailing exactly how the Chinese Communist Party is succeeding in spreading its ideology to American youth through TikTok. The report is titled "The CCP's Digital Charm Offensive: How TikTok's Search Algorithm and Pro-China Influence Networks Indoctrinate Gen Z Users in the United States." And it's pretty damning. It focuses on how TikTok's search algorithm promotes Beijing's political viewpoints and boosts pro-Chinese Communist Party influencers among Gen Z, the cohort born between 1997 and 2012. The report is actually a follow-up to a previous report released in December 2023. That initial report found a strong possibility of content on TikTok being either amplified or suppressed based on its alignment with the Chinese government. But it didn't explore how exactly the algorithm might contribute to this content manipulation, or examine the nature or impact of pro-CCP or anti-CCP content on similar social media platforms such as Instagram, Reels, YouTube Shorts, or Threads, probably because no one is on Threads, and it didn't study the real-world effects on the views of TikTok users. And that's where this new report comes in. So, what exactly did it find? Well, it set out to find evidence of covert content manipulation by TikTok, which it acknowledged would be difficult to do, mostly because no one has access to the actual algorithm. But it did find some pretty intense circumstantial evidence in that direction. The report found substantial algorithmic bias on TikTok, which consistently amplifies pro-CCP content and suppresses anti-CCP narratives. For example, in the case of the ongoing Gaza war, a study from the Wall Street Journal found that 4 times as much pro-Palestinian conflict-centric content was served relative to pro-Israel content. That coincides with the CCP's geopolitical interests in the Middle East. The CCP's official stance is free Palestine because it should be ours. The report also found much of the pro-CCP content on TikTok originates from state-linked entities, including media outlets and influencers. But if that wasn't troubling enough, we have to consider the psychological impact that TikTok exposure has had on users, especially concerning views on China. The report found that survey data shows significant shifts in user attitudes towards China, especially among heavy TikTok users, indicating successful indoctrination. Well, that's not good. A survey from the NCRI report showed that heavy users of TikTok, meaning those who spend more than 3 hours daily on the platform, demonstrated a roughly 50% increase in pro-China attitudes compared to non-users. Use of Instagram or YouTube didn't show any significant relationship on users' perception of China's human rights record or as a travel destination. But on TikTok, heavy users showed a 49% increase in positivity towards China's human rights records relative to non-users. In fact, the report also found that TikTok users who spend 3 or more hours daily on the app had a 41% increase in agreeing that China is one of the world's premier travel destinations, with a 48% increase in agreement with the notion that Tiananmen Square is mainly known as a tourist site. Yeah, if your idea of a relaxing vacation is seeing massacre sites, ooh, maybe for our next vacation we can go to the beautiful killing fields of Cambodia. But wait, there's more. The report also found that TikTok amplifies irrelevant or clickbait material to crowd out discussion of CCP-driven ethnic genocide and human rights abuses on its platform. Interestingly, this may not all be working out as the Communist Party anticipated, because while the algorithm does serve up more pro-CCP content, or at least content that doesn't offend Beijing's political sensitivities, anti-China content appears far more engaging for actual users of TikTok. NCRI's research found that for 3 of the 4 search terms used in their study, Xinjiang, Uyghur, and Tiananmen, people consistently engaged more with anti-CCP content than pro-CCP content. But the same couldn't be said for Tibet, which was the 4th search term in the study. That being said, the highest average views and likes across all 4 of those search terms were given to irrelevant content, signifying that generic clickbait content consistently attracts higher engagement than politicized content. And you won't believe what the most irrelevant clickbait videos were about. Check them out in this top 10 list. Even just joking about that, I could actually smell my soul rotting. Unfortunately, engagement isn't what controls the algorithm, because pro-CCP content got less engagement but more support from the algorithm. I have no idea what that must feel like. YouTube? Now, it should also be said that both Instagram and YouTube have more anti-CCP content than TikTok. Look no further than this channel as an example of that. But Instagram and YouTube are not completely free of CCP influence, as anyone who has had a difficult time finding our channel can tell you. Please like and double check that you're subscribed, by the way, since as I said, YouTube has a habit of secretly unsubscribing people. The report also took a look at influence vectors on similar platforms to TikTok, notably Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. For example, frontier accounts and frontier influencers, which is an increasingly popular set of YouTube accounts that feature mainly female China-based ethnic minority influencers from the troubled frontier regions of Xinjiang, Tibet, and Inner Mongolia. They're coming to you live, straight from the frontier, where everything is totally hunky-dory, we swear. Because everything seems less scary when you add a pretty influencer on top of it. I bet Putin's kicking himself for not thinking of that first. Some of these accounts focus particularly on tourism to these regions, or on the local culture and lifestyle. Come visit Xinjiang, where the locals love it so much they'll never leave, even if they wanted to. The idea is to project a false sense of legitimacy and transparency about China's frontier regions that party-state media struggle to achieve. And a lot of these people aren't naturally pro-CCP. They simply don't know the facts and history behind the communist government and are being taken advantage of. I know I'm as shocked as you to learn that influencers might not be the most knowledgeable folks out there. So what can we do about all this? Well, the NCRI report acknowledges the tension between free speech and regulating the harmful impact of pro-CCP influences on TikTok. And it recommends the creation of a civic trust funded by both the wider public and social media platforms that will empower a systematic pressure testing system to ensure transparency and set standards. That would help identify when platforms are manipulating users' perceptions, because it's bad enough social media is brain rotting without it also being brainwashing. The NCRI report says this is essential to safeguarding liberal democratic values and argues that social media platforms that violate such rules must be exposed and pay the consequences. It also says that protecting free speech and national security are not necessarily mutually exclusive, because if engagement doesn't drive the algorithm, there's not just a national security issue, there's a pretty serious free speech problem as well. Which is why you probably shouldn't be using a platform controlled by the CCP. That's why China Uncensored makes these videos, to spread the word of the misdeeds of the Chinese Communist Party so they can't get away with it. Join me in spreading the message by supporting China Uncensored on Patreon. You can contribute however much you want, but you could even do as little as $1 an episode. And as a thank you, I'll respond to your questions or comments at the end of these episodes. And today's comes from Vincent ZH72. Hello, Chris. I just learned that there is a TikTok revolution in Kenya going on at the moment. Gen Z is protesting against the Kenyan government, in particular against a tax increase on essential goods. Since China controls TikTok, why don't they crush it? Or do they have an interest to destabilize Kenya? That's a perfect question for this episode, Vince. So yes, there have been massive protests in Kenya since the president proposed $2.7 billion in tax increases. That's mostly just to pay off government debt. Kenya is carrying $82 billion of debt, about 75% of GDP. But guess what? China is Kenya's biggest creditor. We know from this episode that China absolutely controls TikTok. So is this a way for China to put pressure on a guy who owes them a lot of money? Could be. And this is another scary thing about TikTok. It gives the CCP a way to destabilize another country at will. Remember how I said TikTok was promoting pro-Palestinian content? For many young people, TikTok is where they first learned about Israel and Palestine. And China pushed content that resulted in massive protests across the US. And then, an American pro-CCP millionaire began funding them, and the protests started to become about overthrowing the American government. You see how dangerous TikTok is? I made a full episode about that millionaire a few months ago. Click here to check it out. It's one of my worst performing episodes because YouTube didn't notify anyone about it. So here's your chance to click on it. Thank you for your question and your support, Vince. Thank you for watching. Join me on Patreon by clicking that orange button. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.